Today's date is 7 October of 2022. My name is Dennis Gill with the Americans in Wartime Experience. We're here at the Women's Veterans Memorial in Arlington, Virginia, and I'm conducting an interview with Rose Mattie. Got that right?
You got that right.
Perfect. Rose, if you could just give us a little bit of background on yourself. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Minnesota, the Twin Cities. Spent most of my summers up on the lake at Mille Lacs with my grandpa Archie, working on the boat, working in the garage, doing things like that. I went to 1 year of college and then decided to join the military. I have 3 sisters. I'm 3 out of 4.
Okay.
And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked really hard for us so that she could be a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
Yeah. So spent the summers camping and fishing and
Okay.
doing that kind of stuff growing up in sports. And
Right. Do you have any other members of your family that are military?
yes, 3 of my grandparents were.
Okay.
My grandpa Archie, who I spent a lot of time with up north, he was World War II Navy in the South Pacific. My grandpa Ralph, he was World War II, and I think he was Air Force. That generation doesn't really talk much about
Right,
it, so never
right.
really captured his stories, which they should have. And then my grandmother, Grandma Betty, she was a nurse in World War II and stationed in Okinawa, Japan.
Okay.
So
And which
Yeah.
branch of the service did you join?
I was in the Army. I joined the Army.
Why
yes.
the Army?
Interesting. You know, my grandparents never really talked about their service time. It wasn't like you have to follow in my footsteps, do service. That was
Right.
never anything. And living in Minnesota, there was no active bases, so military was never anything on my radar. I went off to college for a year at Arizona State, and it's pretty expensive. And heard about some people who joined the National Guard so I could be a part of the community and support communities. And thought, well, hey, I could do that. Join the Guard, pay for school, still go to school. And that was back in 2002. So
Okay.
that was a key moment in our history, which you might be getting to that too. But yeah, so joined the Army just really because I didn't know any better.
Right. What brought you to Arizona? Was it college?
College, yes. I wanted to go to ASU so I didn't have to walk in the snow for classes for college.
Right.
And I was actually going to study computer science engineering. And yeah, things changed after first year of college.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
September 11, 2001. What do you remember about that day?
I remember getting up and going to class, and the
Okay.
teacher wasn't in class. I'm like, where is everybody? So, you know, everybody at that time is kind of like, well, we don't know. So go back to the dorm, and that's when I see on the TV, you know, everything going on. And I think at the time, you don't really realize, especially being young, early 20s, or 19, you don't really realize the impact that's going to have in our future. So that did not necessarily be my exact draw to join. It was more of, oh, this happened. It's terrible for our community and everything like that. But I didn't know the impact that would have on my future until years down the road after.
Right. Were you not aware or give any thought to, okay, on 9/11, this is now the Pearl Harbor of our time.
Right.
We're going to war and what that would mean, how significant that was?
Yeah, so I knew it was significant and had a feeling
Okay.
it'd be significant for active duty forces and all that.
Okay.
I wanted to be available to help the community. I did Police Explorer programs growing up and
Okay.
helped out in my community more on a local scale.
Right.
And thought, you know, I want to give back in a way that I felt I could, and I was comfortable in supporting people I knew and was surrounded by. So that's why I joined the Guard, and so I could finish college at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but that changed because after I did basic training in AIT, got to a unit, and then was deployed. So college did not finish in a timely manner.
Right. When you joined in 2002, you said?
I joined in 2002. Yeah.
Did you have any idea what it is you wanted to do specifically? Or?
I knew I wanted to learn a skill that I could use on the civilian side as well. You know, when
Okay.
I first was talking to recruiters, they're like, you could be supply and you could do this. And I'm like, well, I know how to count items and do things. I want a skill. So
Right.
I used to work in the garage with my dad a lot on the cars. So I was like, I want to be a mechanic. So I signed up to be a mechanic on engineer equipment so I could learn the systems of the dozers and the scrapers and
Right.
the hydraulic systems. And that kind of stuff drew to me. I liked working with my hands and seeing how
Right.
things worked. So
Right.
so I was the only girl.
How long is training for something like that?
So basic training, of course, is like 8 weeks, and then got to go home for the holidays, and then it was another 8 weeks for advanced individual training, both at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Became a mechanic. So
And what is that like for a college girl? Now you're in the military, you're doing something that's dominated by men.
It is, yes, yes. I learned really quickly that if I could do more push-ups than the men, that I could gain the respect. So very quickly, I learned that I went from doing one push-up when I joined to doing like 96 by the end of training at my peak, you know. So, but I knew that gained the respect, and then having the knowledge and just trying to be part of that, the team sense. Like to me, it was no difference, but you know, I, throughout the years realized I never really was part of the team, being the only girl. So I had to step up in my physical fitness and in my knowledge and be on top of it. If you get one wrong, they hold against you forever. So yeah, so it was challenging, but I took on the challenge.
So you felt like you had to be better just to be equal?
Oh, absolutely. I felt like I had to be better, and I felt like I was held to a different standard. Okay. Like if I failed, I felt like I was failing for like labeling every female behind me, right? Okay. But if I could reach that level where I could, you know, be good at what I do, at least be knowledgeable and ask questions if I don't know and be present, then they wouldn't label every other girl behind me as being, oh, she's the weak link. We don't want the girl, right? So you kind of have to face that really and learn how to navigate that world real quick.
So when do you deploy for the first time?
Yes, I went to basic AIT and then was going to start college again. So I did 1 month of college and got transferred to a new unit. I joined in Minnesota because I went home for the summer, and then went down to ASU so I could get in-state tuition, be back with my classes. And I was in for like 1 month, 2 months into the school year, and they said, all right, that's it. You got to go. And I'm like, I got to finish school. And the professors at the time weren't really up to speed on what's happening. It's all new for everybody. So I had to drop my classes and just kind of then pay for the school. And then just kind of get thrown into this world of training. It was like a 15-month deployment it ended up being, because we had to railhead all of our own equipment, being a mechanic. So we had all that old National Guard equipment that was like Vietnam era equipment. Right. We had the cut bees and all that, and we had to railhead it all and get it sent over to Kuwait. And then in Kuwait we had to download it all and then drive from Kuwait to Baghdad and get set up. And we ended up being in Camp Taji, and then I got sent on a detachment down to the Baghdad airport area, stuff like that.
What year is this?
2003. And then we didn't get home till like 2005. So, wow. Yeah. It was, yeah.
What are your initial impressions when you get over there? I'm assuming this is your first trip to the Middle East?
First trip to the Middle East, yep. When I was young, I lived in Europe for a little bit, so I kind of knew travel in foreign countries and kind of understanding like that. But Kuwait reminded me of like walking in a blow dryer with sand. Just remember being hot and terrible. Sleeping in tents in different random areas. You're like, you have no idea what to expect. But I grew up camping, so I'm like, well, I can handle this. This is not bad. The most memorable part of that whole trip was when we get the briefing that we're going to drive from Kuwait to Baghdad. And they're like, hey, I think I was specialist at the time, Specialist Mattie, you're going to drive the lead truck. And I'm like, great. I don't know how to drive the truck. They're like, oh, it's fine. We'll just write it. I'm like, what am I driving? They're like, a Humvee, soft skin Humvee. And then they give us the threat brief. And I'm like, okay, soft skin Humvee. They're telling me that they're targeting the lead drivers in the first truck. I'm like, okay, this is great, guys. Thanks. So I ended up finding a dumpster of units that were kind of coming back and found some metal. I welded myself a door and took on that challenge. And you just kind of have to face that fear and not show the fear. You have to
so tell us, what is it? So those who are watching this, what is a soft skin Humvee?
Oh yeah, so the soft skin Humvees, it means that our doors pretty much don't exist. It's just a fabric. So we just have fabric doors that we're going to drive through these, they call it the danger zone and stuff. And no ballistic material at all. We put some sandbags on the floor, but you can't make it too heavy because then you can't move. So a couple sandbags on the floor. And then, I welded my own door on because I learned how to weld. So it's a good skill. It's a good skill to have. But.
And at this time, IEDs are a big issue.
IEDs,
for like that.
yes. IEDs are a big issue. RPGs, small arms fire. This was, right when everything pretty close to the beginning of everything kicking off. So we still don't know. We don't have really set any like our training procedures. We're kind of still figuring it out as we go. And we were a maintenance company. So we're not trained in, you know, any kind of returning fire or anything like that. You're just kind of, we're mechanics and welders and builders. And now we have to put on this, you know, back to our basic training role of being that soldier first and get to our area. So yeah, it's interesting.
What are your day-to-day duties?
So on that, so I have 3 combat tours total. So that was my first one. Day to day is working in the shop. So I would go in, we'd do oil changes and things like that. They ended up putting me on a detachment down close to the airport. So just a small group from the whole company. So it was away from the rest of the company. There I got a couple different roles. The main was they trained me on how to fabricate hydraulic lines, because a lot of the buffaloes that were doing IED clearing would get their lines blown out and they need the hydraulics to maneuver these arms. So I ended up getting trained and did my own little mobile unit for fabricating hydraulic lines in country. So,
what kind of vehicles are you mainly working on? Just Humvees
Cut Vs, anything that comes in. I mean, we were able to work on anything. So yeah, I did the hydraulic lines for a while, and then I got put on a mission to drive like out the wire to another base real quick to put on up armor on vehicles. But we didn't get up armor. So we had to drive our soft skin Humvees across really fast into another base to go put on up armor on these other vehicles that they finally decided they got the kits for. So we were installing the up armor kits on vehicles. So putting like the 200-pound door on and stuff like that. So yeah, it was whatever they needed fixed, they could come to our area and we'd figure out how to fix it. So.
Just Army vehicles or anything?
We mainly worked with Army vehicles.
Working on aircraft at all?
No, I did not work on any aircraft. I didn't get into aircraft stuff until I got smarter and later in my career. But it was, mainly just a lot of Humvees. We had a lot of Humvees at that time. They didn't have much of the advanced equipment then, like the cool ASVs and the big up armored stuff now. So.
Was it because the military just didn't know, or they weren't prepared, or what? What's the reason that we're sending troops over there with?
Yeah, I think that was a big learning curve, and I think they realized real quickly once we got over there. They ended up, after our tour, they ended up keeping equipment there, and then soldiers would sign for it over there instead of railheading, getting stuff there, using your own equipment. So I think that's been a challenge in the military. You know, it's probably still is a challenge in the military, but that really highlighted it because the National Guard wasn't used in a wartime scenario until 2000, like after 9/11. Yeah, yeah, we were.
So is your equipment a lot older than the regular Army guys?
It was at that time. Yeah, yeah, we got all the hand-me-down equipment. So yeah, we had all the like used stuff and. So, but we made it work since we were a maintenance unit. They're like, we can fix this. We got this. We're the grunt. We got this. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Living conditions. What are they like?
Yep. First tour, I lived in it's like kind of just a mobile trailer, and then you had to walk down to another trailer for any showering and stuff like that. For a long time, we didn't have power in those things, so it was like water bottle showers. So you learned how to keep the water bottles out in the sun all day.
Right.
So you have a nice warm shower at the end of your day. The food wasn't bad, ironically. They had I think KBR and stuff were doing the food then. So the chow hall, halfway through the deployment got better. So we had access to good food on that trip, but it's just kind of like camping in a trailer, getting up and working, and not much communication back home because you would go and sit and try and you get like 1 hour at the computer lab, the mobile computer lab that they hastily set up, and you try and type in your password and everything, and that would take just an hour for everything to like load and connect, and then they're like, your time's up. I'm like, all right, sorry mom, you didn't get an email today. So I did a lot of handwritten letters on that one just to kind of capture some stuff and get the thoughts out on paper and send it home.
Right.
Yeah.
How about recreation? Is there a lot of downtime, or is it?
It kind of depends. Yeah, it depends on your schedule with your own squad and how you worked that out. So, I ended up right where I was, being stationed next to a Puerto Rican guard unit, and so they started hosting salsa dancing nights. So I learned how to salsa dance in combat boots in Iraq. So my mom's like, "What?" But you have to find time to be human again. Right. Sometimes in those environments when you're always thinking about, if RPGs are coming in or grenades or things like that, you have to find time to still be human. So, right. So I salsa danced.
That's interesting. I went all the way into Iraq to learn salsa.
Right. Yeah.
Any moments that stand out about your first tour? Anything that really you remember the most about it?
Now, the first tour was the toughest just because integrating with it was new for everybody. And right. In integrating, in hindsight, integrating with the males that I worked with and trying to be looked at as a soldier and trying to limit the harassment. And there was some, of course, we're getting better in the Army, but that one was I just kind of became a lot alone.
Right. And you're there the first tour, how long?
So, it's a blur how long you're in country, but I know we were in country for over a year, and we had training on top of that before we deployed. So the whole active duty time ended up being about 15 months of training, deploying, getting over there, waiting in Kuwait for equipment and stuff like that. So, yeah, long.
So you come back from that deployment. How long is it before the next one?
So I get back 2005, and then I deploy again in 2009 to 2010.
Okay. Is there any thought because you're in the Guard,
mm-hmm.
Is there any thought after the first deployment that I'm done with this and I've done my duty, I'm going to move on?
Well, I really didn't think I would deploy again, You hear all these stories, right. World War II vets and all this, they do their one tour. I did not think I would end up with 3. So I started working full-time at the maintenance shop, being a mechanic, and also working I wanted to be a stunt actress. So I was working on trying to do that and thought, well, I can get a paycheck, still go to school and do all this and combine all that. And then they offered me some cool experiences. They sent me to Kenya for a week to teach the Kenyan military information exchange on mechanics and maintenance, and I thought that was an awesome opportunity. They sent me to Jordan for the Jordanian Peace Operations Training Center to learn that. So they kept just dangling cool stuff to kind of keep me in. So, yeah.
It worked.
It worked. Yeah, and then they promoted me. If I changed my MOS, they promoted me to an E6. So I moved up all the way to an E6 for that second one and went into chemical school. So I was chemical, nuclear, biological, radiological specialist for the company. So
what does that entail?
That entails you learn how to issue out gas masks. The training for that was more intense. You train in chemical warfare and understand the hazards and how to protect yourself in different environments and decontamination and those kind of stuff. So that part of it and the theory part of it was exciting to me, and learning how to track different things and all that as far as chemical warfare. But then back to the unit side, it was pretty much I just held inventory for the chemical equipment. And yep. And then they ended up making me the operations NCOIC. So I ran operations for the company on the second tour. So same company, same place. Back to this time they kept me in Taji. So I went up to El Taji, Iraq. But
to get certified in that, are you required to be exposed to anything while wearing mock gear?
Yep, they put us in some chambers with some different agents, nerve agents and stuff like that, and we have to do the whole complete decontamination and get out of that equipment and do that. So it teaches you that your equipment works and how to use it properly. So yeah, but that's a nerve-wracking thing. You're like, you want me to do what?
So there's got to be a little bit of stress involved.
There is, yeah.
When you put it on right. And
exactly. Like, I hope this works. So, but so another challenge that I just thought was cool. That was cool to learn.
What's changed? You said you were in the same place, the second tour?
Yep.
What's changed in those 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, they changed that whole, we didn't have to bring our own equipment now. We had up armor vehicles at this time now in 2004. A little more exposure. I got to take, I coordinated a humanitarian aid mission on this one. So I networked with some people that were allowed to interact with the community, and got some soldiers out and did a cultural class and brought them out where we could hand out some humanitarian aid, clothes and stuff like that we had, just to get them out of the fob. Because when you're on the fob, inside the wire, so to speak, you know, you just kind of get in this same old routine. You get bored, you play so many video games, watch so many movies, that I was hoping to make an experience for some of my soldiers that could let them actually see a different perspective and the reasons we were out there, and get them outside that wire, because we were a maintenance company, so we weren't necessarily, you know, trained to go do those things. But that was a highlight on that one, I think, is that I got to do that with some soldiers and
Are you
the
interacting
feedback
with Iraqis?
I did in that one on the humanitarian aid mission, yes. And like I said, that one was most rewarding to me for that mission, because the feedback I got from some of my soldiers who thought this was the highlight of their whole military career, that they got to be exposed to a different culture. They got to do something rewarding in their sense, and not just go out and fix a truck and go to sleep and fix a truck and go to sleep, and it gets very monotonous. And so, yeah, some sent me some emails that they were really, and that made me feel good that I could create an experience for somebody else.
Yeah. How about living conditions and things like that? Has anything changed in between tours?
That one was pretty much the same. We took over the buildings, so we were at Al Taji, which was their former Iraqi Air Force base. So we had it's like you're living in a blown up building pretty much. You know, the walls are falling down, and you find beds and mattresses and piece together and make your room as homey as you can. Have mom send blankets and pillows and stuff. But so just in buildings this time, but the same kind of thing. Some people had, 12 people to the room, so you don't really have much privacy. Because as operations NCO, I found a building close to my office and just kind of claimed it. I'm like, I'm gonna take this one. They're like, okay. So, but I wanted people in the middle of the night to be able to come get me if they needed to, and not have to put on all the gear and hike it down the street. So, yeah, I had a hard building.
Right.
A little more safety.
What were your thoughts on the Iraqi people?
So I didn't get much interaction besides going out with them. It was, people are people. I mean, you go out and you see little kids running in the street and they're excited to see something new. It's just understanding different cultures, and people are just trying to survive no matter where you're at, even if you're in a combat zone. So I think that all those experiences really set me up for success in my final combat tour to Afghanistan. So
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What year is that?
Afghanistan was 2011 to 2012. So it was a quick turnaround. While I was in Iraq, I decided I was going to submit a packet for flight school. So I submitted a packet to become a pilot and did everything in Iraq, and got accepted to go to flight school. And then I found a flyer that said, hey, be a part of history. We're looking for women to join special operations. And I was like, well, this sounds interesting. So I asked if I could put my flight school on hold and try and do this mission. And they're like, yeah, sure. So I ended up doing the cultural support team mission with special operations, going to the assessment and selection, and meeting an amazing amount of great, amazing women who I felt were kind of like me in a sense of, physically wanting to do great things, mentally wanted the challenge, and didn't back down from a challenge. And so I assessed, selected, trained at Fort Bragg, and deployed to Afghanistan with under the Special Operations umbrella.
So what are the duties of a CST?
So we were trained on engaging with the local population. So, after this amount of time in the country, the cultural differences between engaging with the women on the ground, which is 50% of the force, or the people, the population, and our men were not culturally acceptable to talk to them. and see what's going on in the areas. So we were trained to integrate we lived in a village and would go out and talk to all the different households in the village and get invited in for tea and watermelon and kind of learn what was going on around the area from the women in the village. We were also allowed to search them if we needed to, because then that's culturally acceptable because they're wearing the burqa and full protection. So if you had a female like us, then we didn't cross any cultural boundaries that they could use against us and any propaganda and stuff like that. So, yeah.
What kind of units are you attached to?
I was attached to SEAL teams and Green Berets.
And so they're going out. When they go out, what are they doing? Looking for intel? Or?
So yeah, a lot of that. So they split kind of our group up. We had half of our women got in teams and went with the Rangers to do more direct action. So those women lived on a fob and then would be picked up to do different missions and raids or anything with their male counterparts. For me and my battle sister, we were sent down to live in a village. So we lived in the mud hut with an ODA team, Green Berets, Operational Detachment Alpha team, down in a very kinetic part of Afghanistan. So we were on every mission. You know, if we were in the planning meetings, if we were going out to do anything, if we got information that, hey, somebody has an IED here in the village, we're going to go figure out where it is, then we would all go walk through a minefield and find out where the IED is. Right. So, yeah, so it was different dynamic than the other two tours completely.
Obviously,
yeah, because I was actually in the village now and out integrating and talking to the villagers and the children, and they would come by every day looking for us, and it was very very interesting, and probably my highlight of my whole career was doing that mission. So not only did we have to gain the trust of our, the women and the children and the men in the village, but we also at the same time were proving to the guys we worked with that, hey, we can keep up.
Right.
We can do this too, because legally we were not supposed to be in a combat environment as being a female. So that was parallel challenges on that mission that we had to face.
How long was the training for that?
That was a quick training. We did, I don't remember, a couple months training. They had one group before us, and they didn't get much training. They just kind of picked some girls and said, okay, hey, you guys are going to go try this out. For us, they did assessment and selection because, they realized maybe we need people that kind of want to do this too and have that drive and that mental fortitude that could handle high stress environments. So since we were the first and there was that quick, we got to just get people in there, it was not as much training as I would hoped they would have given us, but enough to kind of get by. So maybe one month, 2 months at Fort Bragg. So.
Carrying a weapon and everything?
Oh yeah. Oh, I can show you a picture. I have a great picture. I don't know if you can show pictures on this, but full kit, weapon. My battle sister and I ended up wearing the headscarf to integrate with the locals and appear more friendly, but when you're walking with 3 weapons and combat boots and stuff, you don't look very friendly to talk to people. But it's, so yeah, there's me out walking. I know your camera won't get this, but I can send it later, just so you can kind of see.
Wow, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and then this is how we look going out. The women and children really like to do our makeup when we would sit around. I mean, people are people, right?
Yeah.
And, getting someone to be comfortable talking to you and having them invite you in their home. It's a very, we run a lot of the Pashtun culture. And they were very welcoming people. We'd go into houses and women would be like, I don't like that you're here. I don't like that you're here, but here, have my best food. And let me serve you some tea when they have nothing. Yeah. So it's very, very interesting.
Any incidents that stand out? I imagine your first time.
Oh, this one. Yes. Well, it was actually, it's odd. It stands out because it was almost exciting because it's like, finally, I've gotten to train to be a soldier, this whole time. I've been on the bench, so to speak, right, of learning how to shoot, move, and communicate. And now they're like, oh, now you can go shoot, move, and communicate with the rest of them. I'm like, oh, thanks. So it was like exciting. dangerous, very kinetic area, but knowing that I was kind of still pulling my own weight and that I was seeing if I was capable of keeping up with these amazing elite soldiers and doing our training with them, because we'd train on our downtimes. It was awesome. They taught me how to like shoot the mortars, taught me how to shoot the sniper rifles, and it finally felt like, hey, I've made it.
Right.
Now I'm a real soldier. Took 3 combat tours to feel that way.
Right. Are you with the translator, an Afghan translator?
Yes. Yep. So they issued us right. A female interpreter. We had one. We had to kick back just because different areas have different dialects in the country, right. And you kind of learn that the hard way. So our second interpreter, she was amazing. She was from the U.S., but very deep family history in Pashtun and stuff like that. And she was great. We put her through some stuff, like just come on, dragging her along. But she started working out with us and doing stuff. And the 3 of us, me and my battle sister and our interpreter, kind of had to live in create our own little home. So we built our own beds and created everything. So we kind of bonded like we were sisters in a sense, and we had to count on each other. So yeah, but she did great. She was amazing.
So when you're going out, you say your battle sister. Mm-hmm. There's 2 females in the units.
Yep. So they paired us up. So me and my battle sister were paired up as a team. So it was us and then the interpreter. So anytime we'd go into a compound or a house or get invited in, it was just the 3 of us in there. They wouldn't allow our men to go in because that was frowned upon.
Right.
Because this is the women's space and the children's space and stuff like that. But the men could talk to us. They loved talking to us too, which was great. Children loved talking to us. The women loved talking to us. They'd complain to us about their husbands all day long. I'm like, oh.
I guess people are people.
Exactly. They'd be like, I don't know what he's doing. He's off in the mountains all day long. And I'm like, well, what is he doing?
Right.
But yeah, they just complained like, we have to do all of this. And some houses, women weren't allowed to walk outside without an escort. So they would climb the walls of each other's houses to get to the other person's house. So if they heard we were coming to a house or kind of saw, all of a sudden we'd see women climbing the walls to come see us and chat with us, and just thought it was amazing. And we were in such a rural area that the idea of a different language didn't even resonate. Like kids had no idea. They're like, why can't I understand you? We'd have kids asking us that, and then our interpreter would try and be like, well, because they speak a different language and you don't. They're like, it's so rural. I felt like I went back into like biblical times.
Right.
It's crazy.
Because their entire world is right there.
Right there.
That's all they know.
Yeah, so disconnected. They're even disconnected from like the city centers, or disconnected from knowing what, if there's any boundaries or borders of lands, or even knowing what, the United States is. Yeah. It's just these strangers with guns coming into their area. So we calmed a lot, explained a lot, which I think was helpful. Because I'm a mom now, so being a mom, I can't imagine being like, what's going on in my neighborhood? Yeah. So yeah.
They had no idea, I would imagine, why this was happening, why the Americans were there, why we were at war.
Right.
This is completely new to them.
Mm-hmm. Some understood, and we'd been there already, like over 10 years by this time. Yeah. So some of them, you could kind of tell a little hierarchy of the women in the village, and some had more access to different things and moved around, and kind of had an understanding, but the basic knowledge at the children level, the only school they're allowed to go to was run by the Taliban. And they're only getting the information they want them to hear in the country and stuff like that. So it's a different perspective, and you kind of view war and everything in a different lens once you're on the ground talking to people. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the fear that when you're in a life and death situation like that, how do you overcome that? How do you continue to focus on the mission?
Yeah.
Knowing that there's people out there that would like to kill you.
Right. That is, we were told to be kind, courteous, and prepared to kill everyone you meet. In our training, they kind of addressed some of the physiological issues that would happen, that you lose your hearing, the pinpointedness. And so understanding the physiological effects that are going to happen. And then that training was helpful. And I did read a lot of books on killing and on combat, to understand the psychological aspects of being in combat zones. And I think because this was my third tour, a little more knowledgeable what was happening, you just kind of, you're afraid to be afraid in the situation. You know, you have to keep it all in, put on that brave, I got this. It's gunfire, we're gonna run to it. We don't run from it because it's what we're trained to do. And it's that selfless service that you face death, you know it's possible, and you just get over it and drive on. And, you know, I think coming home and then realizing the things you did, just kind of like, oh, maybe I should have been a little more frightened in the moment, but you just, you fall back on your training. Yeah.
Trust the people you're with. And
Yeah, make sure that, you know, we kept the communications really good between me and my battle sister, and this was her first tour ever, and she was a lieutenant and I was enlisted. So she outranked me and everything, but behind closed doors in our sisterhood little area, we would, you know, train each other and talk about things and issues. And I felt like I could mentor her a little more as being an E6 on a seasoned E6 at that time, right?
Right.
So.
Did you guys ever engage in any firefights?
We did. Like yep. Our base, there was like a season. It was a fighting season. It's so weird. Our base was targeted a lot. Our mud hut, our clot was targeted a lot. So we had a lot of incoming rounds and trained for reactions on that. I remember the first time we had incoming rounds, I think the guys we were with just expected us to like huddle down in a bunker, and we suited up and we were on top of the buildings like, where's our position? Where do you need us? And I think that initial reaction we had kind of were like, oh, okay, we could use you guys. We could use you. So, and then when we're out on patrols and stuff, there's small arms fires and stuff going on, and walking up on IEDs if we go anywhere. And yeah, so we had EOD with us that we'd gather up all the stuff we found and go blow it up over there and keep going.
Right.
So.
What's the tempo like? Is this an everyday thing that you're going out on patrols, or is it?
It wasn't every day. It was kind of set by the team, the ODA team lead and stuff would set it by different information they get down. So sometimes my battle sister and I would have an idea, and we would pitch our idea and our mission, and they were receptive after we got to know them a little more, and let us do our kind of parallel missions as well, and go out and chat and maintain our presence in the community. So it wasn't like a set battle rhythm. So my battle sister and I created our own. We'd get up, we'd work out in our like makeshift prison-looking workout area, right? Use a tree branch for pull-ups, and just because I knew we would get stuck in a rut and stuck sitting, and you don't want to sit too long and dwell on things. So we would make sure, and I made sure she wrote in her journal every night. It's like, we got to write in our journals because you're going to regret this.
Right.
So we'd write in our journals every night about the day, and in the morning get up and do our workout. And sometimes we would finagle. We worked with the local police, local Afghan police, and the local Afghan army. I think all kind of were in our little compound as well. So we'd have different shura meetings with them and stuff. So once we got to know them, they started bringing us like fresh eggs, and so we would make cookies or try and lighten morale by trying to make some stuff in our mud hut kitchen, or just to kind of create a sense of home. Right. So yeah.
Are any moments that stand out about your final tour? Totally different than the first two.
Totally different from the first two. And I'm grateful I had the first two, so that I knew to journal this event. I knew to not take any experience I was getting for granted, getting to be a part of the team. And even though I'm not one of the guys, that was the closest I felt to being part of the team, on being integrated in that. So many things stood out on that one, as far as getting to, they let me start working on their trucks, and they let me start being the driver for the missions, even if it wasn't a mission that needed female engagements. They just started taking me as one of the soldiers, and they started trusting me to be like the squad leader out on a patrol and stuff like that. And I felt like that was great. In dealing with the population, the point that stands out the most is we kind of did a walk around our little village when we were getting ready to leave, just to kind of close out and explain kind of what's, we're going to be going. We're not sure if you're going to see other women and stuff like that. And we stopped at this one compound, and the lady's like, oh my gosh, through an interpreter, of course. I feel so bad. I feel so bad. And we're like, why? She's like, I prayed to Allah that you would leave. And now you are, but I want you to stay. Like it was this really human moment that, you know, she was like praying to Allah and complaining about us being in her backyard. And then when we told her, she felt like she really made that happen, like, because she did that. So she filled my headscarf, like made it a basket and put almonds and raisins and all the stuff that they had for like their winter food storage in my basket here. And I had to walk the rest of it holding all these gifts from her. So it was interesting. It was, you know, memorable. Yeah.
And you're there for a little over a year?
So we are on the ground once we finally got to our spot for about 9 months. And we actually delivered our baby in our last week in a snowstorm. Because the woman couldn't get to the local bazaar area where they had some kind of doctor. So the local police rescued her, brought her to us, and was like, "You're women, you can deliver babies." We're like, okay. PowerPoint, what do we do? So yeah, she came in full burqa. The guys, the medics we had there were like, "Oh no, we're gonna do this." I'm like, "Oh, you sure?" She's full burqa. They're like, "Yeah, you guys got this. We got a radio for you." We're like, "Okay." So if an emergency situation came up, they were gonna, you know, step in and help, of course. But we delivered a baby boy in Afghanistan, and so that was a memorable moment there too.
What are the differences, do you think, between Iraq and Afghanistan?
So as far as my experiences in combat, being on a FOB and, you know, just doing the day-to-day monotony stuff, I can definitely see. I think I was a little more resentful for being there, and was like, why am I here doing this? I didn't feel like I was in danger at all on those ones, besides my initial drive, of course. But once you get to the FOB, you're not doing that. On my Afghanistan, I felt like I was trained better. I was knowledgeable of the culture. I was knowledgeable of how a small mistake can have, you know, international incident and stuff like that. And I felt like I was contributing more on a positive impact, even though in a combat zone. So it's interesting.
Yeah. And then you come back. Now, do you get out of the Guard when you come back?
I do not. I come back, and 4 months later, I get sent to Fort Rucker, Alabama, to go to flight school to become a Black Hawk helicopter pilot.
Okay. You did that?
I did that.
But you haven't deployed?
I have not deployed as a pilot.
Okay.
I did that training. That was 18 months. So training for flight school was 18 months training. My favorite part was going to SEER school, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. My mom cannot understand why that's my favorite, but I really enjoyed that training. I probably needed that before Afghanistan, you know, but I got it after. And then just flying. I was one of the only girls again, maybe in my warrant officer class. I became warrant officer. I was the only girl of like 200. And then in my flight school, I think maybe there was 2 of us, but it kind of switches depending on where you are in your training and what track you go. So, so another challenge of feeling like I have to start over, prove myself as a girl. None of my past experience mattered anymore. It was like a clean slate being an officer and trying to fly the helicopter.
Right. What drew you to want to do that?
So I originally wanted to do that before I took the Afghanistan tour. I thought, you know, there's got to be a better opportunity than just being a mechanic. I felt like I've accomplished that and kind of got that under my belt, and I wanted to see what else I could do. And I had talked to a lot of people who said, oh yeah, I thought about being a pilot, but I didn't. Or I thought about it, but I never put the packet in. And I thought, well, I'll never know unless I try. So I thought, well, I'm going to try. If I fail, at least I failed trying. And I didn't fail. Made it through the course and became a helicopter pilot and went back to the state of Arizona and flew Black Hawk helicopters around Arizona and trained. It's a great place to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Gets a little hot in the summer, but.
Yeah. And how long did you do that before you got out?
Yes. So same time I was in flight school, I ended up getting married to a great guy. And he's military as well. So once I started flying back in Arizona, started a family. So I have 2 kids now. So in 2015, my son was born, and they told me I was grounded when I became pregnant. So that pissed me off. I was like, what do you mean? Why can't I do this? A lot of issues with that one. But I kept trying to be part of the team, showing up and trying not to wear the pregnancy uniform as long as possible. And, helping out on the ground, mission planning, doing what I could to be part of the team. Got back up in the helicopter, started flying again. And then 2017, got pregnant with our daughter. This time I didn't tell them right away.
Learn the first time?
I did. I was like, well, let's see how long I can go. I did clear it with, my personal doctor, who was like, yeah, she's in like a super space suit. There's no issue. And they don't have a lot of data on it because not a lot of women are pregnant flying helicopters. So I was like, well, I'm going to do it. So I did that for like 5 months before I was like, okay, well, it's a little hard to pull the stick back a little bit. It had the pilot body. So then my husband got a job opportunity to move, and because they kept grounding me for being pregnant, I got behind all my peers in flight hours. Didn't have the support available I was a stay-at-home mom. I thought this was great. I could stay at home, kids can go to grandma's, I could go fly, I'm available. But they just kept restarting me, and I kept having to reprove what I've already learned and reprove. And so he got a job opportunity, and it sounded great. So I said, you know what? Let's do this. Well, I'll take an E. I'm in the IRR. So, there's talks right now. They're like, do you want to come fly again? I'm like, I don't know. So.
What do you do now?
Now I am a stay-at-home mom, 2 kids. The youngest just started kindergarten. So since my days were free, I started getting my master's degree now in international relations with a concentration in conflict resolution. So I felt I could maybe combine my experience on the ground now with some education and just see where the future takes us. So, yeah.
How do you think your combat experience, how does that affected your life? Now you have a chance to look back. It hadn't been that long ago, but.
No, yeah. It makes it harder to integrate and talk to, like, make friends, like at the bus stop with the other moms. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm just a stay-at-home mom, because I've always got some backlash, and I don't know if it's jealousy or can't connect or don't understand, or the things that I feel are important in the world now, like, are not what everybody else is working on, like what's the latest TV show and stuff like that. I'm like, I've never been into that because I've been on the other side of the world. So just trying to integrate and find that balance of being a civilian with that experience. And then being asked to share my story is helpful too, because I used to just keep it all in, because it's hard to explain unless you're talking to another vet, right? On what happens and what you're doing. So, so that's been the hardest.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you telling your story.
Thank
It's
you.
an amazing story, really. I mean, you don't see a lot of, like you said, you see a lot of women in combat because they're really not supposed to be.
Right. We did change the rule. We kind of were the guinea pigs, and they thought, oh, you guys can do this. So I think it was in 2012 or 13 when women were then finally allowed into combat action roles and into units that were that. So I feel good.
Well, one more question for you. Somebody watches this in 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What message would you like to send them about your service, or about just any advice you want to give?
Yeah. So I'd say, if you want to do something, try it. You never know what you're capable of and what you can do unless you try. And then on that same note, it's okay to fail, because you learn from failures. So to men, women, children, whoever, if there's something you want to do, don't let people tell you you can't. There's a way.
That's good advice.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
I know it's a cliche, but your service is much appreciated.
Thank you.
And thank you for sitting down and telling your story.
Thank you. I appreciate it.